not met me yet. But we're so glad to have everyone here this morning. We have some technical difficulties happening, but we're working through it. But we're just so excited that everyone's here this morning. We're just a group of believers that love to gather together to worship God and just to hear from Him and hear from His Word. And so we're just excited to have everyone here this morning. So yeah, we're going to get right into worship. If you want, you can stand. If you want to sit, you can sit. I'm all about whatever you feel like doing during worship. Go ahead and do it.
Welcomed in this place, let every heart adore, let Realize just how
Say he's jealous, 'cause he is jealous for me. Yes, he is. His love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are now, and your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us, and oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us. You love us, God, with an unconditional heart. May we realize this love. Oh, what kind of love is this? Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Sing it again. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. 'Cause we are his portion and he is our prize. Drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. And if grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside my chest. No, I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. One more time. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. God, we just thank you. God, that we just come together and worship your name this morning, God, where we can reflect on the love that you have given us. God, 2,000 years ago, when you sent your son Jesus to be that full picture of love for all of mankind, everyone in this room and anyone who's not in this room, anyone who doesn't know who you are, God, that love is still for them. And so, God, this morning, as as we listen to the word, as we listen to your voice this morning, God, that the same love that we've been given, God, that we would reflect that on the world around us. God, that we would be the love to the world around us that you are to us. God, thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you're doing in each of our lives this morning. God, so many different people represented, so many different lives represented, and you're doing something in each and every one. And we just thank you for that. God, we love you. God, we thank you that we can gather together. Amen.
Amen. Hey, if this is your first time here at Table Community, I just want to say welcome. We're very glad that you're here. Things are going to be a little different this morning. We've got some technical difficulties that we're working through, and I told Kale that he had the week off, and then he came to just be here and worship, and he ended up doing a lot of work for nothing. So next time, Kale, if we tell you have the week off, just don't come to church. Okay. All right. So one of the things they teach you whenever, if you do any kind of public speaking or in seminary, if they're in a preaching class or anything, so one of the things they tell you to do with a sermon is to start with a point, start with something catchy from the very beginning, and they tell you, they say, do not start with announcements. But today we're going to start with some announcements. So if you're not in a group, we're doing groups right now. So the sermon series we're doing is actually goes along with our groups right now. We're doing a study on the art of neighboring, which is a study that really looks at the great commandment to love God and show God's love to our neighbors and what it looks like to do that very practically. So if you're not a part of a group and you want to be part of a group, I want to invite you to do that. We've got one on Tuesday night that meets at John's house in Duncan. And it's kind of geared toward young people without kids for the most part. If you have an infant, it's probably okay. But their house is not childproof. I can attest to that. And if you have kids and you want to be part of a group that's geared more toward people with kids, on Wednesday night we meet here at 6 o'clock. And we have a group that is actually, this next week we'll be doing the first study portion of this. And so you can hop right in, and you want to miss anything. It'd be a great opportunity to join in there. So if you're part of groups, I want to invite you to do that. The other thing, one of the things that we've been doing every week for kind of like our take home, our next steps that we do, is we've been working through this neighborhood map. And so if you don't have one of these are sitting on the seats, you can grab one of these. But these are these neighborhood maps that we're working through, and there's kind of a way to help guide us through how do we practically do that in our neighborhood. And so this is something I've done at my house as well, and this week I started doing this with here. So we're kind of new to this space as well, and so we started doing this right here, and I drew this out. It's not a grid because I just thought, well, our little shopping center is not a grid, so I'll just draw it out the way it is, and that'll help me visualize where people are. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to meet some people this week, and so I started to get to know some of the people. I met Melanie next door. She's in charge of the yoga studio, and I learned some things about her. And all the way on the end, there's a barbershop, and there's a guy named Derek, and he runs that barbershop. And then there's a guy who runs a bill payment center, and his name is Ferron, and he is a hustler. That dude he's got like 5 businesses going on in there, and he's a musician. And he'll tell you, he's famous in the Latin community. Most people know it. So that's one of the things I want to encourage you to do, and we'll be talking about those in here and in groups. If you're new today, I'd ask you if you wouldn't mind filling out one of these blue cards that are in there. This will just let us have your information. We won't pester you other than to just send you a text and say, hey, we're glad you're here. If you want to meet for coffee, we'll do that, but it's not an obligation. So we'd love just to find out a little bit more about you. We'll do offering during the last song, and so when we pass the bucket, we just ask that you put that in there, and that'd be good. So next Saturday we have a work day here, and so we're new to this facility, and so like I said last week, the church is not the building, but the building needs our help. Okay, and so this used to be a restaurant, and now it's a church, and so we're turning. We've got just a lot of little projects that we're going to do. So even if this is your first time, you can come and join us. We'll put you to work. Okay, so we'd love to have you there. We'll go from 10 to 3 on Saturday. We'll start at 10, work till noon. I'll buy pizza for whoever's here. We'll do that, and then we'll work till about 2, and then we'll clean up from 2 to 3. Because I'm going to make some sawdust and stuff. It's going to get messy. And then next Sunday night, there's a little football game going on. If you don't know what's going on, it's called the Super Bowl. It's where every year the New England Patriots just beat whoever they get paired up against, because that's how it goes now. And so we want to invite you to that. The Greer baseball team's coming out for that, so we're going to have those guys here. Our Wednesday night group is going to help host that, but everybody's invited to that. And so you guys are more than welcome to come and watch the Super Bowl here with us. We'll be glad to have you. So this week, we're covering again the art of neighboring, what it means. And the art of neighboring is, again, it's talking about the great commandment, what it means to love God and to show God's love to our neighbors. And we're looking at it in terms of our actual neighbors, the people that God has put most directly in our lives, and what it means to show them God's love. And one of the things that we hope comes out of this is that we will begin to have some gospel conversations with people, that we'll be able to tell people about Jesus in our lives. That's part of the purpose of developing a relationship with people, and part of what it means to show people the love of God. And so one of the things that I think is important to understand about the gospel is that what makes the gospel powerful, the gospel just means good news. What makes it good news in our life is not just the concept of the gospel. It's not just the story of Jesus. It's the power of the real life person, Jesus, and what he does to change real life people's lives. And so we're going to look at that today, what it means for the good news in my life to be good news in the lives of my neighbor. And so we're going to start today with a video. And here's the deal. We're going to watch this video on my computer. And I'm going to mic it with my mic right here. And we're going to see how it goes. Because it was supposed to be up there, but like I said, we had technical difficulties. So let's try this. These people, some of you know these people, some of you are related to these people. They'll introduce themselves to you, but they're local people. They're from Greenville, and I would consider them experts in the art of neighboring. Okay, they've actually done some stuff and taught me some stuff that we've applied in our own lives, and I just think what they have to say is really valuable. So you guys watch right here on the big screen.
My name is Stephen Leopard, and I am a barista part-time, and I also serve as a pastor at Origins Greenville in downtown Greenville. This is my beautiful wife, Kaylin, and we've been married for 2 years now.
So like Stephen said, my name is Caitlin, and I work with a recruiting and staffing firm in downtown Greenville. And for the first year and a half of our marriage, Steve and I worked for Apartment Life, if you have heard of that. Basically, we lived in our apartment communities, and we were there to love our neighbors. So we really just love that you guys are going through this series, and we're there to just love our neighbors and create community. It was a lot of fun.
Well, we believe that Scripture is clear in Matthew 22, where Jesus says that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so just reading that, we just thought, man, we like to take Scripture literal, and we believe that everything that God says in His Word is true and it's honest. And so we're like, man, what would it look like if we just took God's Word for what it
is to you what a permanent life was to us. And just maybe this is the first time that you're hearing it, because that was kind of recent for us, of just having this concept and just seeing this biblical aspect in this way.
So I think one of the things that I had to the adjustment that I had to make in my own life was just being very intentional about my surroundings. When we were living in our apartment, just walking through the parking lots, going to the clubhouse, going to get mail, whatever it may be, I was actually Kaylin was kind of catching me, kind of walking as I was kind of just watching my feet as I walked, and she was like, Stephen, get your head up, we're the care team here at this apartment, we're here to love people, and so be more aware. And so I think for me the adjustment was just being more intentional and being aware of what was going on around me, keeping my head up, looking for people, opportunities to wave, to smile, to say hello, even an opportunity to figure out somebody's name, and even just small surface level things was a big step for me as far as being intentional with meeting new people and meeting the people that lived around us.
I love what Stephen said about just being intentional, and that creates opportunity. And I think just one thing for us is that I love just to invite people over for dinner. I love to feed people. I love to be fed. So feed them first, then they'll listen. So that's just something, you don't have to add something to your plate, but you can just invite people in on what is already happening in your life. So we love to we're going to have dinner every night. So just inviting people over for dinner, or if you don't want to cook, just inviting people out to dinner. And just getting to know people's names and just being intentional. And right now, in the past we lived in apartment communities, and now we live in a townhome community. So we don't have a huge front yard or any people hanging out tons outside around us. So kind of from our front door to our mailbox, we have a short space. We have to be intentional, and we have to keep our head up, even if it's just checking the mail, looking around to see, is there other neighbors checking their mail or going to their car? More intentional, we can say, hey, we can approach someone, just inviting people over for dinner, inviting someone to go to the park. If you're already planning on going to the park with your kids, inviting them in on that.
So I would say intentionality then leads to opportunities to get to know people's names and backstories, and then when the invitation comes, it's easier for them to accept that invitation because you've already gotten to know them, you've already kind of done your homework, versus knocking on the next door neighbor's door that you've never met, inviting them over for dinner. That can be a little bit awkward and intimidating.
All right. Well, actually, can everybody hear that okay? Okay, good. We'll actually hear some more from them at the end of the service. I've created this very video-heavy message, and now we're watching on my laptop. But one of the things that they said that I hope you grabbed was this thing that intentionality, which is what we talked about last week, leads to opportunity. That when we become intentional, when we put ourselves out there, that is the thing that's going to lead to opportunity. And last week we talked about intentionality looks like having a well-ordered heart. When we think about each part of our life as to what it means, how does that relate to the kingdom of God? How does that relate to the life that God intends us to live? And so what does it mean for us to look at our neighbors and go, okay, how does God call me to love them? What kind of love? What kind of effort does He call me to put into that? And how am I supposed to love the people that God has made me responsible for? And intentionality is one of those things. You just have to do it, right? You have to find practical ways to be intentional, or it won't happen. Because where there is a will, there is a way out, right? There is an excuse, right? So my oldest brother, he's 4 years older than me. He's the oldest of 6, and he could find his way out of anything. Right, he was a master at this. So somehow Sunday afternoons when the football game was on, he was supposed to be doing dishes, but I was doing dishes for him, and I didn't understand why I was doing dishes for him, but I was and he wasn't, right? And I remember in college, he was 4 years older than me, but he came back to the same university to go to grad school, and so we were living together, and he was supposed to have an 8 a.m. test, and Instead, he stayed up all night, playing video games with his friends. And the next morning, he wakes up and he's like, I'm not ready for this test. Right? So he calls the professor, and, he's already had too many grandmothers die that semester, so he can't use that excuse anymore. And so he calls him, he's like, this will work. I've done this before. I was like, get out of here. And he calls the professor, and he's like, hey, during the middle of the night, we were running the dishwasher, and a hose broke, and now we're standing in 6 inches of water in our house, and we're scooping it out the back door. I don't think I can make it today. And she's like, oh, I understand. You can go. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, that really works, right? But where there's a will, there's a way out. And so today we're going to look really quickly in Luke chapter 9. If you want to turn there, this should be on the screen. We should have verses. Yes, we have verses. And so you can follow along right there if you want to. But we're going to look at a couple of different people that were on the surface. They said they were available to Jesus, but when Jesus pushed them a little bit, they had reasons for why they were unavailable for Jesus. So let's begin in Luke chapter 9, verse 57. It says, as they were walking along, someone said to Jesus, I will follow wherever you go. Now, they think this was a scribe, a teacher of the law, somebody who had a nice, good church job. And he said to Jesus, I'll follow you wherever I go. And Jesus says this. He replied, foxes have dens to live in, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place even to lay his head. And so Jesus is getting at this. If you follow Jesus' ministry, and we'll circle back to this in a few weeks, that Jesus actually relies on the hospitality of others to get where he's going. Okay? So for places to sleep, for finances, his ministry is funded by other people's hospitality. And so we're a church plant, so we understand that a little bit. Like the seats that you're sitting in today, somebody else bought for us. The sound system we're using right now, someone else donated. The projector, someone else donated. It's only the stuff that we bought that doesn't work. What's up with that? And so maybe we're not receiving from others the way that we're supposed to. And so, everything relies, in Jesus' ministry relies on hospitality. He's explaining this to this man. And the reason he's explaining to this man is because he understands this man's motives, right? So he's a teacher of the law. So the reason he wants to follow Jesus is because it's going to prop him up. It's going to prop his ministry up. It's going to prop up the thing that he's doing. And so Jesus, and as far as we know, this guy's never heard from again in Scripture. And so Jesus is trying to point out to this man that if your motives aren't right, then you're not actually available to Jesus. Okay, so if the thing that motivates you and why you're doing it, even if if I'm here today and I'm doing this because I want to get popular, I'm not actually available to Jesus. And Jesus may use me despite me, but he's not going to be able to work in me as he uses me because I'm not actually available to Jesus. And so this is what he's trying to point out to this man. And the same is true when it comes to loving our neighbors, right? We're not doing this so that we're the coolest kid on the block or anything like that, or we have some ulterior motive, but we're doing this because Jesus commands us to love our neighbors. Look at verse 59. It says, then another person said, Jesus says, come follow me. The man agreed, but he said, Lord, first, let me return home and bury my father. But Jesus told him, let the spiritually dead bury their own dead. Your duty is to go and to preach about the kingdom of God. This is one of those verses I don't like. Sometimes I read the Bible, Paul says stuff all the time that I don't like, and then you read the Old Testament, there's plenty of stuff in there to disagree with. But most of the time you like to agree with Jesus, right? Right? If all else fails, you want to agree with Jesus, right? But every once in a while, Jesus says something, I'm like, I don't like that you said that, Jesus. I wish you wouldn't have said that, right? And usually one of two things is happening. One, and I think both are probably true when we read this passage, is one, he's saying something that kind of convicts me, and I don't really want to deal with that right now, and so that's why I don't like it. Or two, there's more to it than I'm reading on the surface. There's something I'm not getting, because he's in the 1st century and I'm in the 21st century. And this is one of those passages where Jesus, he tells this man to follow him, and he doesn't follow him. This man, he's got something that's come up. He's got some trying circumstances. And I look at it and I say, Jesus, the guy's dad just died. Let him go and bury his father. That's okay. That's not, I think that's pretty reasonable. But most scholars actually agree that this man's father was not dead yet, okay? imagine if this man's father was dead. He shouldn't be with Jesus at the moment, because Jesus is out hanging in public places doing what Jesus does, and this man should be home if his father has just passed away with his family. That's where you would expect him to be, being with people who are grieving, planning funeral arrangements, all that kind of stuff. If he truly cares about his dad who had just passed away, he would be there. And so Jesus, most scholars agree that he's not dead yet, okay? So that he's going to die. It doesn't say whether he's got days or weeks or months or years, but it's just the assumption is kind of he's on up in age and he's going to pass away eventually. And so he's asking Jesus, he's saying, once my dad passes away, then I will follow you. Okay, and so he says, Lord, but first let me go do this. And Jesus it's kind of like saying, to say Lord, but first, it's kind of like when people on Facebook, they start the phrase, if you do this, just delete it and don't post it. But it says, I'm not a racist, but, right? And then they always follow that with something very racist, okay? And so this is kind of what they're doing with Jesus. They're saying Lord, which means you're in charge of my life. I follow you. I do what you say. You're my rabbi. I follow your way of life. Okay, so he's calling him Lord, and then he's saying, but first, let me do this. And so to say Lord and then to say but first is kind of, those are kind of opposite things. They don't really work together. And so Jesus is pointing this out to him. He's saying that there is no but first. There's no delay. There's no procrastination. There's not, Jesus, I will be faithful to you in my job, but first I'm going to need you to give me a new job, okay? That then I'll act like I'm following you, or Jesus, I'm going to raise my kids the way I'm supposed to raise my kids, but we just need to get through this season, and then we can get to that kind of stuff. Or whatever area of life applies to you at the moment. And so Jesus says the spiritually dead, they'll put their family responsibilities before the responsibilities of Jesus. Because we talked about last week with a well-ordered heart, that things are in the place that they're supposed to be. That if Jesus is at the center of your life and you're trying to live life the way that God intended it to, you put Christ first in your life, well then all that other stuff is going to kind of take care of itself in light of who Jesus is in your life. So the family stuff will take care of itself because you love Jesus and you love your family the way that Jesus wants you to love your family. And the same is true with the art of neighboring. Okay, so there is no hey, Jesus, the art of neighboring is this thing where we follow the great commandment, and Jesus says the great commandment, and he says, the whole law, everything hinges on this, everything rides on this. And so if you use that as the window, the lens through which you view life, then everything else is going to fall into place the way it's supposed to fall into place. But Jesus is saying there is no Lord but first. There's just Lord, and what I'm calling you to do is something that you can do right now in the circumstances that I've placed you in. Look at verse 61. And another, these guys don't stop. And another, yes, Lord, I will follow you. But first, he's got the same problem. Let me say goodbye to my family. But Jesus told him, anyone who puts his hand to the plow and then looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God. In other words, anyone who is called to this life that Jesus is calling us to and then looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God. First off, they don't understand the gospel in the first place. This is a man who he wants to go home and see his friends and family, and he just wants to get things in order before he follows Jesus. And Jesus is saying, this is the gospel. You don't need to have your life in order to follow Jesus. That's what grace means. And this is somebody who doesn't understand grace. Is Jesus saying you don't have to have everything in order. You don't, your life doesn't have to be flowing well before you can follow Jesus. And so with each one of these people, there's a will, and where there's a will, there's a way out. Okay? And so if you don't want to be available to Jesus, then you can find an excuse. You can find an excuse. And so today we're talking about intentionality in terms of availability, in terms of making myself available to the people that God has put in my path, and has God put them in his path because he wants you to be responsible for them. Nobody's responsible for loving the neighbors that God put in your life but you. God has given you those people to love and to show God's love. And so to be available means, unlike the people that we just read about, we'll have to adjust our schedule, our agenda, our plans to align with the desires of God, that our priorities come second, and that our priorities ultimately should reflect the priorities of God. So I grew up in Louisiana. I grew up in North Louisiana, which is a interesting place. So I grew up near where Duck Dynasty was filmed, okay? So North Louisiana is like redneck central, okay? But every summer we would travel 4 hours south to South Louisiana, which is Cajun country, okay? And we would go to this little town called Napoleonville. And the reason we would go there is because we had these family friends. We called them Uncle Tommy and Aunt Sue, and we thought these people were our cousins, and their extended family was kind of our extended family. And it was like middle school before we realized that we weren't related to these people. But we went there every summer, and I loved it down there. And Napoleonville is where a lot of Swamp People was recorded in Napoleonville. And so let me just say this. The more reality shows that are filmed in your home state, the harder it is to be proud of your home state, okay? But there we were, Napoleonville. The only thing in Napoleonville is Lake Verret. And Lake Verret is just, actually, if you watch Swamp People, they catch a lot of alligators in Lake Verret. Okay, and so let me tell you about lakes down there. They're not like lakes like you think of lakes, okay? And lake houses are not what you think of. There's no real hard shoreline. The lake is basically just like a clear spot in the swamp, and that becomes the lake. Okay, it's just, the lake is just where it gets too deep for the cypress trees to grow out of it. Okay, that's all it is. Okay, and so we would go out on the lake, and we'd go out with Uncle Tommy, and we would go in his boat or a little thing called we'd go out and paddle on a pirogue, which is kind of like a flat Cajun canoe thing. And we would go out there, and as we would go around the lake, everybody would pass, "Hey, Tommy!" Everybody knew Tommy, and there was just this thing that I loved going there because there was this sense of community that was there. There's not a lot of money there, and the lake houses are just like little huts that are kind of like built back in the swamp, and so everybody knew everybody, and it was just, it's one of the things that I just loved about being there. And there's one city in South Louisiana, and that's, worth speaking of, and that's New Orleans, and it has this, it's kind of this Cajun culture is blended with the big city, and New Orleans is kind of its own place, right? It's really hard to tell the difference between Tuesday and Saturday in New Orleans, okay? It's kind of a party all the time, it's just such a fun place to go. And Matthew McConaughey, he filmed a show down there. What was that show? True Detectives. Thank you, Molly. Down there, and after he got done filming True Detectives, he gave this speech, and one of the things he remarked about New Orleans is he talked about the sense of community, and he said part of the reason he noticed there was a sense of community there is because of the architecture of the city. And so in New Orleans, most of the houses are these shotgun-style houses, they're really thin, long houses, and because part of it's just because of the poverty there, and when things were built, there's not everybody has air conditioning. So if you don't have air conditioning in Louisiana in the summertime, you're hanging out on the front porch, okay? And so everybody has front porches, which is part of why everybody has community, because everybody lives facing the street. They live facing where things are going on, and so they know their neighbors, and they know kind of the goings-on of the world. And so he said it was a great engineering feat that they pulled off, that people don't live in their backyards, but instead they live in their front yards. And so this is one of the things, not that we learned it from Matthew McConaughey, but that me and Molly and our daughter Stevie began to do when we moved to Greer this summer. So we moved here in July. We moved into the house we're in July. And so we actually have this really nice big backyard that we don't ever really use for anything other than, I'll smoke a cigar or hang out by the fire pit back there every once in a while. But we decided that we were going to be front porch people. And so we decided that we have just a short little yard, but we decided, hey, we're going to hang out on the front porch. And this is how we're going to be intentional about being available to people. It's how we're going to get to know people. And so one of the first months we were there, we had a front yard potluck, and we invited some of you guys that are here today to be a part of that. And that's how we got to know some of our neighbors. We just knocked on houses and said, hey, free food, and people showed up. And, we got to know some people. We got to know our neighbor next door to us, Debbie. Debbie is a little 70-year-old, probably lady. She's real sweet, has a small dog named Aubin, which is a weird name for a dog. Has a quiet smoking habit. Sam lives across the street with his mom, and he's probably in his 50s, and he doesn't wear a shirt most of the time. And he likes to borrow my weed eater. And we met him there. And then next door we have Jasmine and Carly and Joe, and she's a single mom with 2 kids that are both in the 6th grade. And they're wild, super wild, but they love to play with Stevie. And so this is how we decided, one of the ways we decided to be intentional is by becoming front yard people. And so I want to show you this quick video of someone else who decided to be a front yard person. And in doing so, it really revolutionized their life.
I always thought I'd go far away on mission. I really did. I really thought my calling would be international, and I never in a million years thought that the Lord would ask me to walk outside of my door in the mission field where I live and get to know my neighbors. I'm Kristen Schell, and I live in Austin, Texas. I am a wife and a mother of 4 children. Any given day, I am in the kitchen or in the minivan. I am active in the kids' school. I'm a writer, and I volunteer at church. We've been in this neighborhood almost 10 years. I always knew we were supposed to love our neighbors because it's the great commandment. But how you live that out day to day is hard, especially when you don't know your neighbors, which is the situation I was in. I did not know my neighbors. Sure, I knew, a handful of them. So there was this huge question, what do you want me to do, Lord? Here I am, Lord. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to walk across the street and bang on doors? Do you want me to take cookies? What do you want me to do, Lord? God answers prayers in really winsome ways. I was hosting a party with a friend in our backyard, and I didn't have any tables. And so I ordered a picnic table from Lowe's. And when it arrived 2 days later, I knew that for the purposes of the party, I was going to have it in my backyard. But as soon as that party was over, I was moving that table in the front yard, and it was going to be a gathering place. And so I painted it turquoise, which is my favorite color. And I did. I put it outside, underneath the tree in the front yard. It was awkward at first. I have this table, it's bright turquoise, it's sitting in the front yard, and now I'm like, well, now what do I do? So I took a whole bunch of stuff out with me. I took my phone and my journal and my computer, and I even I had some art stuff that I was working on because, I needed to look like I was just doing something. Like going out front and just saying to God, here I am, Lord, your will be done. Go before, behind, and beside me into the neighborhood. And that very day, life changed. And I met a neighbor within 3 hours of putting a table out in my front yard. A lot has happened since putting the table out there. There are a handful of women who are now very close friends who I did not know. It has become kind of a gathering place.
I'm Bob. This is my daughter, Peggy.
So one of the best things is just the sense of normal community, everyday life. The neighborhood kids come over. They'll do homework when the weather's pretty. We've had lemonade stands, hot cocoa stands. More intimately, it's a place where I can meet and have met neighbors who now pop by with coffee and just for 15 minutes, a conversation over coffee that wouldn't have happened. The Lord has taught me, and I am learning to be present. And that, it sounds like it should be a no-brainer, but listening is not a skill that came naturally at first to me, nor was being present. It's great to see you here. Loving my neighbors has taught me how to love God better. It's drawn me into deeper relationship with Him. You don't need permission or a program to go outside and be who Christ has called you to be. When we open up our front door, we take 3 steps right out our front yard, good things happen. Open up your door and let God do the rest.
All right. So, if you liked her story, she actually has written a book called The Turquoise Table, which you can read. It's an incredible book. It's worth your time to read. But there's something that she did by making herself available to others. She, in a sense, designed her life so that it could be interrupted by the things that God would want her to do. So this is one of the ways you can look at your life and say, hey, am I actually available to God? Ask yourself the question, do I have space for God to interrupt my plans? So if you look at your life and you thought, oh my gosh, like if I had to deal with that neighbor right now, like I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the space, it would just ruin what I have going on. Then maybe you need to think about what it would look like to reorder your life and reorder your heart so that you're available to God, so that you can be interrupted by God. In our life, the interruptions look like this. So Debbie, the 7-year-old lady that lives next door, she, most of the time it just looks like little conversations across the backyard fence. I just went back there to do something real quick, and she's back there, with her dog or smoking a cigarette. And so I just take a few minutes and just check in on Debbie because she lives by herself. And sometimes it means checking the mail for her. She goes out of town, she checks, we check her mail. If we go out of town, she checks our mail. And so that's what it looks like. For Sam and his mom across the street, Sam has a muscular disease and his mom has trouble speaking. She's hard to understand. And so, the interruptions for us mean, well, sometimes it just means I go over with the weed eater and he's got a lot of little stuff in the front yard and I weed eat his yard and I let him borrow tools, or I go and I fix their wheelchair ramp, or they don't have a car, and so sometimes it just means, hey, we just take them to the grocery store, and just means I sit in the parking lot while they go into the grocery store. And it takes an hour out of my day, but it's something that I'm glad to do. And a lot of times with Sam, it just means long conversations. He's always on his front porch, and so when I pull up, he's there when I get out of my car, and so it just means I stop and I talk to Sam for a few minutes. But it's not anything I planned, but it's something I say, okay, this is 15 minutes I'm going to give up, and it's not going to hurt anything, right? It may bump supper time back 15 minutes, but what is that? And so with Jasmine, she's a single mother, and so her kids are wild, and she knows that I'm a pastor, and so she asked me for parenting advice. I'm like, I don't have kids in 6th grade. I don't know. Take them out to ice cream. That fixes everything. And she asked me that. And so with the kids, for us, it means interruptions, like lots of interruptions. Like the doorbell never stops ringing. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. It can be 6:30 in the morning. It can be 10:30 at night. Our doorbell might ring. And it might be, hey, I missed the school bus. And most of the time it's just like, hey, we need some bread. We need some cheese. We need some milk. We need some sugar. Like your basic ingredients for anything. Like those kids are always coming over for a snack or something. Or they want to come over and just play with Stevie sometimes. I'm like, guys, Stevie is 2 years old. It's 9 o'clock at night. She's been in bed for 2.5 hours. Like, you need to go to bed too. But that's what it means to be interrupted. And because we're willing to be available, because our lives were willing to be interrupted, we moved from places where these people were just complete strangers when we moved in to a place where they became acquaintances, to now these people are our friends. These are people we know. We ask them to do things for us. They ask us to do things for them. It's a reciprocal relationship at this point. And so now when I think of Debbie, the 7-year-old lady next door, we've kind of become like her emergency contact somehow. And, when her son, who lives in Spartanburg, can't get a hold of Debbie, he calls me. And he says, hey, I can't get a hold of my mom. I need you to go over there. I need you to check on her. I go over there and check on her. And she's like, yes, I'm fine. I just didn't want to answer his phone call, right? And so, but it's helpful for him because he knows his mom's not dead, right? And then Sam across the street, Sam's brother passed away earlier this year, and he didn't go to church anywhere, and so he knew I was a pastor, so he asked me to do his brother's funeral for him. And so he doesn't go to church anywhere, but he tells people that I'm his pastor, right? So that's really awesome. And so at Christmas, he had a lot of funeral expenses this year because he was in charge of taking care of that. His 8-year-old son, he didn't have the money to buy his son Christmas presents. So at Table Community, that offering we took up, that helped to buy his son Christmas presents this year because we formed a relationship with him. And then Joe and Carly next door, those kids, they come over. They came over to our house on Christmas Eve. We were able to share the Christmas story with them. Sometimes they just show up. If their mom's not home, sometimes they just show up at our house right now. And they're like, we don't have any parents here. Can you watch us? Can you be the adults that watch us? And we say, sure, and they're 6th graders, so they smell bad, and we have to Febreze the house when they leave. But we get to have these deep conversations with them. And this is what I mean when I say the gospel is more than just a concept or a good story, but the good news of that in my life, where God is changing my real life, begins to seep over into our neighbors' lives and to change their lives as well. And so we're going to end today with a video, kind of hear the last part of what Stephen and Kaylin had to say. And they have some really good stuff. And as soon as this video is over, I'm going to pray, and then Caleb, you can hop up here. So let's watch this.
Honestly, it's been such a joy to do this, and it's been fun. It's been scary at times. I remember when we first moved into our townhome, it's like the first move-in day, I remember seeing our neighbors. I was like, I want to know their name. But it was scary. So it's been scary at times, but totally worth it. And it has really brought a lot of joy into our lives, just building those relationships. And honestly, I feel like, I know that the Lord blesses obedience. So I feel like He's really just blessed our life and being obedient, not always having it perfect and not loving our neighbors, all of our neighbors perfectly. We definitely have a ways to go in this, but I do feel like just the little bit that we have experienced, the Lord blessed it, and it's been fun and joyful.
Yeah, I think another thing that we've been able to experience too, and how it's kind of changed our life, is that we've noticed that as we continue and even begin extending love to our neighbors and to those that live closest to us, we've noticed that that's kind of come around full circle at times. And not only do we get to extend love and extend invitations and invites, but then we've experienced people inviting us back. And so extending love and invitation and those kind of things have then begun to turn into receiving that love and those invitations back. And so it's cool to see how we were intentional with inviting people over to our house when we first moved into our neighborhood. And then a couple months later, we were actually invited to our neighbor's house for a game night. And so to kind of see other people begin to be more inviting into their own homes has kind of been cool. So I think loving your neighbor can be contagious. And so to be able to see that and to experience that is very encouraging to us, because not only have we been able to extend love to others, not always will you get that love back, and that's not why we do that, but it's been encouraging for us to see that love extended back to us, and so that's been very encouraging. Yeah, so I think about our friend Justin, who we met in one of our apartment complexes in downtown Greenville, and just to kind of see him begin coming to the events that we were throwing as a CARES team as a part of apartment life, and to kind of see him kind of coming to those and getting to know him and kind of forming a relationship and a friendship with him. It was really fun. And then to eventually see him start coming to the church that we were going to, not even because we invited him, but some friends that Kaylin's going to mention later, but to kind of see him then start coming to church with us at Origins, and then to see him kind of come regularly and showing up, and we would just see life change happen in his life as a single father, loving his son and leading his son so well. And so we were able to kind of see that unfold. And then a couple months ago, we actually got to celebrate with the church at his baptism. He got baptized in front of our church, and we were able to celebrate that there in Falls Park. And so just to see stories like that unravel in front of us has been really encouraging for us.
Yeah. I think about David and Sarah. They were some of our neighbors, and we talked about church, and we invited them, and they came, and then they started getting involved in our small group, and then Sarah got baptized, and then they've just been using their gifts in the church, which has just been really awesome. David is now in the band, and he has created our church's website, and we've seen so many people come because of them, and they're some of our best friends now, and they were originally our neighbors, and so that's just, we love just rethinking about all these stories and just the way that the Lord has just worked in our life through our neighbors.
Hey, so I hope some of these stories have been helpful for you today to begin to think about what it will look like to be available in the lives of the people that God has put around you. And so part of the reason we have a very video-heavy message today, because I thought, this is one of those concepts where you can actually talk about the concept of availability a lot, but nothing makes it real like all the stories that we looked at today. And so these stories hopefully have got your mind turning a little bit, and you can begin to say, okay, how can I begin to be available to the people that God has made me responsible for? And it might not mean that you're a turquoise table person, but there are avenues, there are places within your life that God has given you and equipped you with, and He says you just need to step into it, and we become intentional about that. The opportunities will present themselves. Let's pray, and then we're going to worship a little more. Dear God, thank you so much for today. We just thank you for your Son Jesus, that you got creative and you made yourself available to us. And that's changed our life, God. And so we pray that the work of Jesus in our life would seep into the lives of others around us, that our good news would be their good news because they know Jesus through us. God, I just pray that the places you would have us to go and the spaces that you would want us to create would just become evident to us. That you would say, this is what I want you to do. This is so simple. I just want you to make yourself available. I just want you to step out there, and I'll give you the opportunities. I've placed you around these people because I've made you responsible for showing them my love. If you will make yourself available to God, I just pray that as we make ourselves available, that you would just give us opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And that this thing of the Great Commandment wouldn't be a concept that lived up somewhere, but it would be part of our story and part of who we are, part of just what it means to walk with you and to take steps to know and become like your Son, Jesus. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
As we move into a time of just response of what we've heard and just responding back to God, what He's been speaking to us, we do have communion available. It's actually at the back of the room, which would be the front door. And so it's there for you if you would like to take communion. But we're just going to worship and just respond back to what He's just been showing us.
Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Sing holy, 'cause holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. 'Cause holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. God, we just take this next time to just give back to you what belongs to you, God. And we just respond out of a heart of gratitude and praise for what you've done for us. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and He will never forsake His own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. Before He spoke creation, the God of heaven knew our names. Formed in His reflection, we are His glory on display. And His heart is good. He is always kind. With the cross He proved He is on my side. Sing, we are. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. children of the King. And in his loving kindness, he chose the lowly and the weak. And his heart is good. He is always kind. With the cross he proves he is on my side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. We are the Lord's and he will never forsake his own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. And when the lies speak louder than the truth, remind me I belong to you. And when I can't see past the dark of night, remind me you're always by my side. And when the lies speak louder than the truth, remind me I belong to you. And when I can't see past the dark of night, remind me you're always by my side. You're by my side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. 'Cause we are the Lord's and he will never forsake his own. 'Cause we are the sons, we are the daughters of God. God, we just thank you that we are the sons and daughters of God, of you. God, your love that you gave us, God, that we can build our life on that and extend it towards people around us. So this morning as we leave these walls, God, that we would just remember what we've heard this morning. God, and as you continue to speak throughout the week, God, that we would just listen to your voice and in response, just obey what you're telling us. God, we love you. We just thank you. And we're just so thankful that we get together this morning. Amen.
Hey guys, just a few things. A couple reminders. Groups. Tuesday night, we meet at 6:30. We meet at mine and my wife's house in Duncan. It's not too far. It's probably 10 minutes from here. Wednesday night, it's more child friendly. We meet Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Another thing, hey, if you want to see those videos again, we'll put them on our website at tablecommunitychurch.com. Nice. And we have a Facebook page, so if you couldn't maybe see the screen as well, or if you just want to revisit those, they'll be available there. Anything else?
Cups.
Hey, if it's your first time, if you like coffee or if you like anything hot, we have coffee mugs for you. Grab one, take it on your way, okay? I'm just going to pray real quick and then we'll head out. God, thanks for meeting with us today, like you always do, God. Pray that we walk out differently today than we walked in. We pray that maybe our neighbors will be blessed because of what happened here today. And may that extend outside of